Today, we are so incredibly blessed to have director, producer, speaker, and advocate Jaco Booyens on our podcast. If you have been in the anti-sex trafficking space for a bit, you have probably heard his name or his movie, 8 Days. If you haven't watched this movie, I highly recommend it. It shows how quickly people can get into trafficking situations and how dangerous it can become. A few weeks ago, Bridget and I were at a trafficking conference through my church and had the privilege of hearing Jaco speak. He is a passionate, bold, blunt, and godly speaker, exactly what we need as a guest on our podcast. Thank you so much for joining us today. Can you please take just a few minutes to discuss your history and how you got into the anti-sex trafficking world?
Yeah, thank you, ladies. First, for your voice and for being at that conference. It was a great time together. But thank you for continuing this conversation and for having me on the podcast. It's through moms and women like you that we bring truth and fortify and defend our children. So yeah, for us, it started in 1994, which is a while ago. For those people doing math, that's 26 years ago. And it started with my sister being trafficked in South Africa. Single parent home, amazing mom, very tight family. The misconception is that it should be a disenfranchised family. It should be a family that's disconnected, or the child has to be a runaway or a foster care child. Not the case. Very tight family. Mom's a teacher, 45 plus years now. I mean, we're close. No father in the home, which definitely played a part, no question. And we'll talk about that today at some point. But it was part of the profiling, but my sister Ilanka was trafficked, and her story is an amazing story that's really hers to tell in her book called Keeping Secrets. And she's a warrior and a champion. But that was our introduction, without knowing that was our introduction to what would be called, sex trafficking. And then fast forward many years later, in 2001, immigrating to the US. And her situation was a 6-year trafficking situation. And so immigrating to the US, seeing trafficking in the US, learning that, okay, wait a minute, this is so prevalent in the US, forming the organization in the US to say, look, we got to fight for the American child. I mean, and although we've aided in the fight in 53 countries around the world, but there had to be a focus, because at that time, in the early 2000s, honestly, there was hardly anything being done or discussed domestically. Mm-hmm. So that you had organizations really focusing, and still the majority of the organizations focus on the international front, but they had to be changed domestically. And so it's been a very long journey. As you ladies know, I shared with you just before starting this podcast, we're literally placing a survivor, a rescue victim today in the middle of this. And so it's a day and day thing. And so it's so important to bring the truth to the American family, to say, look, this is what it really looks like. This is how it happens. This is who's doing it. This is who's aiding and abetting it, if you could think that such a thing was possible, but it is. And so that's our history. But we really work with over 170 organizations in the US, and we do gap analysis in all 50 states. We look at where it's coming from, who's funding it, who's writing legislation. We write legislation. We just had a bill signed by Governor Stitt in Oklahoma that I personally authored. So there's a lot to this, right? And we have to talk about the real issue so that we can have real results.
Definitely agree. And people don't realize how bad it is in the US, and that we're the worst consumer of it, and we're commercializing it. And so most people just think of the drugs, this and that, and they don't realize it's happening in your churches, it's happening in the schools, your neighborhoods, and all over the community. But so many turn a blind eye to it.
Yeah, no, 100%. Look, it's easier to, it's that natural knee-jerk reaction that we have as human beings. When you see something gruesome, or you see, you want to look the other way, mm-hmm. right? You don't, and it's that fight or flight response that you have. Well, if something's really bad, are you the one to run in or run out? And this is why boys, when they're very young, go, I want to be a firefighter. And that's the one job that they then become firefighters. Everybody wants to be a doctor, and then it changes, but there's something that says, I'll run into a building that's burning, yep. But I'll run into danger, I'll run into, and so that's the response we need to trigger with moms and with dads today. Go, okay, when I see something that's not right, I can't run from it because it exists in our country because we've looked the other way.
Yes.
And this is not me judging people. I'm just talking about human behavioral science, how the human being behaves, and when do we engage in a fight, on behalf of someone else, when it doesn't touch us yet. Now, it touched my family, yes, of course. But for those who can easily dismiss it and say, well, I haven't seen it with my own eyes, you have, number one. You walk by it every single day. That should scare the dickens out of you,
Right.
because it's infiltrated society to the level where it is in every church. Every church. Jaco, that's a bold statement. We are decades into this fight. Okay, we speak around the world. We work with every law enforcement department you can think of, with all the judicial branches of government, and so it's in every single church, neighborhood, school, district, zip code, because it's sex.
Mm-hmm.
It's sex. Yeah. It's in every home. Sex is in every home. So now it's just a question of, is it perverted or not? Right. And we're in a culture today that has completely embraced sexual immorality. So it's proliferated our society. The internet has poured gasoline on the fire. Yep. Right? It's created crazy connections between the perpetrator and the victim. And so it is everywhere. So we do need to be proactive so that the dad and the mom that says, look, I haven't seen it. Maybe I have, but I don't know what to look for. Yeah. But golly, I don't want it in my neighborhood. And if it's in my neighborhood anywhere, we need to start fighting for the children that are not our biological children, in order to prevent it from becoming a personal issue.
Well, and I was really excited to come and be able to talk to you about this, because again, I think this is probably the 4th episode I've talked about this thing that happened to us. But after Bridget and I saw you speak at my church in Phoenix, you had mentioned that the average age of looking at porn is now 8 years old. So my boys are 13 and 11. I immediately came home. It was actually 3 days before their school started here. I came home and I was like, well, and I've always been open with them. I talk with them about all the things. It's not been that, but I was like, you know what, guys, have you ever heard of porn? Like, do you know what that term means? And they were like, no, we've never heard of that. And so I said, well, just on a very brief level, I said, well, it's when people have sex on camera and they put it out on the internet. And my older son's like, ew, why would they do that? I was like, well, that was the response I need you to have, but it's a pretty lucrative business. It's unfortunate, but here we are. I said, I want you to know that this is out there and I want you guys not to be looking at it. But if there's something that comes up, I need you to tell me about it. Literally 3 days later, he goes, my older son is in 8th grade. He goes to school. He is in gym class. And one kid comes up to him and says, hey, do you watch porn? And my son's like, no. And he walked away and no big deal. And so him and I put him on our podcast and we had a conversation, because at 13, his brain cannot see forward as to what could have gone wrong in that situation. So we sat down and I said, what do you think would have happened had you heard that term and I had not previously already talked to you about it? And he goes, well, I don't know. I said, I do. You would have gone in your room, you would have grabbed your phone, you would have looked it up, and now you're stuck because you didn't know what it was before and you went and looked. And I already told you what it was. So you had no need, no curiosity to go look and figure it out. So personally, I want to thank you for your boldness, because it literally took me home to talk to my kids and it happened to them 3 days later.
Look, how rewarding this is, and all glory to God, but how rewarding this story is, because God says, I'll leave 99 for one. So we should be willing to do these podcasts, all the work we do for one child, one, if we want to walk according to Christ, for one. We're talking about 79,000 a day in the state of Texas, Jesus. 500,000 kids a day in the United States, but we should be willing to do it for one. And right. There's your son. Thank you for being a mom that actually went and did something with the information. And you now firsthand see how real it is and how sovereign God is, that you could intercept your son's life 3 days before he was going to be approached. And I promise you, because he's a boy, he would have looked at it.
Yep.
And I want to paint a picture for people. This is not for the men 40 and over that our dads here that's saying, well, no, your introduction to porn when you were 13 was a magazine in a store, in a sealed bag, behind a black cover that you had to have a fake ID or something to buy. And it was Pamela Anderson, maybe without a top on.
Right.
That was your introduction to porn.
Yeah.
Your son's introduction to porn was going to be hardcore, multiple partner sex.
Right.
It's a different universe. So it radically accelerates the drug in his mind, right?
Yes.
So they get hooked immediately. It is the most violent drug of them all. And you literally, God used you to save your son's life. We've got 12-year-olds right now that watch 2.5 hours of porn a day. Okay.
Oh my gosh.
Only because they were approached by a friend, kept it a secret for 3, 4, 5 months, got caught, and now we're looking at a decade's worth of therapy. Now we're looking at, it's insane what's now. And so this is how this happens. Now, what you just described would be the accurate way of having a sexual conversation with your child before the world approaches them. Well, what's happening in schools today? They're going, well, we need sex ed. And then parents like you would say, yeah, we do need sex ed. We need to talk to our kids about sex. It's not the school's job to do it. It's the parents' job to do it. What happens when the school does it? The school doesn't sit your son down and say, now look, when someone approaches you with porn, don't do it. Don't look at it. This is how it corrupts. No, you know what the school system's doing? They brought in comprehensive sex ed. They're teaching 10-year-old boys how to give consent to sex. Never mind watch porn. They're going into 5-year-olds in kindergarten and teaching them about self-stimulation and masturbation and experimentation. So I want parents to understand, when you abdicate your responsibility as a parent to engage your child at the level which you just did, and you actually equip your son or daughter, like Ezekiel 33 tells us to do, to be a watchman on the wall, to warn them of danger coming, so that they're equipped when it comes, their eyes are secured, they go, that's not right. I was told it's not right. I know the consequences of it before I even engage in it, so I'm protected from it. The school system does the exact opposite today. They want to normalize the conversation. They want children to engage in sexual conversation with adults that are not their family members. And so this should rock every single parent to a standstill. To go, I've got to go have this conversation today.
Yep.
And many of them are going to ask their child, do you know what porn is? And either the child's going to lie to them or they're going to say yes. And then the moms are going to go, they're going to come unglued, because how did this happen? How could this happen, right? Exactly.
Yeah. And parents really have to be accountable. And for us, we always say, have these conversations with your child, because otherwise you have Siri at their fingertips. So many kids have technology and social media, and really, even if, just like you said, the power, I'm big on the power of one. So even if you touch one person, that one person's going to go tell someone else. So no matter if you think your voice is small, use it, because the power of one, you never know what child or what family you're impacting. And this is one topic most people won't touch or talk about because it's touchy, and parents don't know how to have those age appropriate conversations. And grooming, and there's so much grooming in social media and technology today. So for us, we're big on the preventative and teaching them how to use it and use it as a tool. And there's a right way and a wrong way of using it. So the grooming and just your boldness overall definitely has inspired us to do what we continue to do, and just continuing to be a voice for the voiceless.
No, thank you. And I'll say it in a very pragmatic way. And look, I am radical in this sense, because we can't play games. We're so far behind. We're so far behind. We've abdicated our children in the future of this nation. And this is why these radical things are happening in our country.
Yes.
People ask, well, how did we get here? How are we talking about 300 genders? How are we talking about, voice, puberty blockers at age 3 under Gavin Newsom in California? How did this happen? It happened because in 1960, we embraced the sexual revolution, and we said, love is love, man-boy love should exist. And we looked the other way for 30 years. And then we started saying, oops, something's not right. And it took us 10 years to go to action. And now we're dealing with the results. You can't dismiss this kind of stuff and think there's going to be no consequence. And now our whole society is imploding because they're so compromised sexually. They can't talk to anybody. They don't know themselves. They've got identity crisis issues. Teen suicide is through the roof. Teen abuse is through the roof. The COVID lockdown, I don't know where you stand on it, but I tell you, it was an absolute disaster in the fight against child sex trafficking because it took a child from 2 hours a day on social media and content to 8 hours a day. It gave the predators free access. Parents didn't know how to homeschool. They went out of their minds. They pacified their children with technology. It was a cocktail for disaster. And still, we look the other way. Still, pastors don't want to talk about pornography in their church. They don't want to hold men accountable. They don't want to talk about healing. They don't want to talk about depression and suicide and the real things our teens are struggling with. And so for us as an organization, we will continue to create tools to put in front of you and parents who say, watch the movie 8 days, and then let's talk. You watch the film, you go, wait a minute. I thought that every child traffic victim was a kidnapped victim. I thought that she was a runaway. I thought she had to be destitute and in a foster care system. I thought, you thought, because we all hung it on Liam Neeson and Taken, and that's a complete gross misrepresentation of what it is. The number one form of trafficking today is familial. The rescue we did 3 days ago is literally a woman that was being trafficked by her husband. This is not even a minor. This is someone that the world would chalk off as a prostitute. She's not a prostitute. Or the minor that was rescued 2 weeks ago that was trafficked by her coach. Or you're talking about the U.S. gymnastics team doctor. So you have to, or 83,000 lawsuits in the Boy Scouts of America. So we're talking about a predator will put himself in close proximity of children. They will earn the trust of the family, like they did in my sister's case. A record label executive trafficked my sister. Not to tell her story for her. People will go, well, Jaco, why don't you tell her story for her? No, a way we help the survivors heal is we give them their power back so they tell their own story, right? But it was a record label executive that earned the family's trust over a year and then pounced. This is not snatch and grab. Yes, 2% is kidnapping. It still exists, but they don't have to kidnap anymore. They infiltrate community. They earn the trust. And so we go. And so we're talking about a married woman being trafficked. Jaco, that doesn't happen. Oh, you don't even know how much that does happen, right? And so we have to just rip the Band-Aid off this thing. Say, okay, what is the root cause? Let's get to the root, because we have to become preventative. We can't just do triage, rescue all the children. I just told you, it took us 3 days just to find, therapeutic care and placement for this woman. There's not enough beds. There's not enough. We can't handle. If we had to rescue every child today, it would take us 10 years to get them into therapy. There's no facilities available enough. So we have to get on the front and then go, guys, take your child's life back. Right? You cannot give your child's life to the government. You cannot trust the government. It's never biblically not the government's job to raise your child. The school's job is to teach them math and science and geography, and history, which they can't even do. They're not supposed to teach him or her about her body and the purpose of life and morals and that's the parents' job. That's our job. But we're so busy, we want to abdicate that to who? To the government? Come on, please. Let's get real. And so it's just time for our voice to be heard. And the most powerful word I've learned now in life is the word no. No, you're not teaching that to my child. No, my child's not going to that school. No, you're not going to tell me where my child goes to school. I need freedom of choice. No, you're not going to force me take a medicine or a vaccine. The answer is no, right? And especially when it comes to our children. Now, vaccinating children. I can connect vaccinating children to Planned Parenthood, abortion, mask mandates, COVID, to sex trafficking. It's all integrated. It's
Yes.
all a proactive movement to take the life of your child from you. Do you know that it's law in California today that you will lose what's called sexual agency over your child in the state of California today if your child over the age of 3 were to say 3 and up? This is law. Gavin Newsom signed this, okay? This is the law, okay? And I'll say this outright. Gavin Newsom is an agent for all things evil to children because he signs this. And I'm not judging the man. I'm just measuring his policy, his fruit, right? I can do that. I can measure the fruit.
Yep.
If your child is 3 and over in California today, and your child walks into the school, and your child says to a friend, I don't know, I think I'm a boy, but she's Susie. And that comes to the teacher. This is what happens. The teacher calls CPS. CPS comes in, and you as a parent lose sexual agency. You lose legal guardianship over your child's sex. Well, who gets guardianship? Your 3-year-old, your 4-year-old, your 5-year-old.
Who also thinks they're a dog.
Exactly. Who walks around and meows like a cat.
Right.
Jumps like a bunny rabbit, right? You know, I mean, and so CPS comes in, Planned Parenthood gets called immediately, and that child in California now is going to be given a puberty blocker at 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Most of the times, the puberty blocker is a drug called Luprin. Luprin is a prostate cancer drug given to men with prostate cancer, which takes the cancer away, but it sterilizes the man. It's a shoe-in guarantee sterilization program of our young girls and boys, right? And why? Well, so that when they're 18, they can have the sex change operation. So hear this. Well, they can't have an operation to change things externally until they're 18. They can't get a tattoo in the state of California without parental consent, right? They can't write Jesus on their arm if they wanted to, but we can change their gender through puberty blockers legally. We can give the child sexual agency. That is insane. You know how that happened? Californian parents never said no. They gave the pinky, they took the hand, they take the arm, they take the whole body. The answer is no, period. End of story. You're not doing it. And we have the power to make no count.
Well, and then that leads down a deeper hole, and that leads down to trafficking too, because CPS is a part of it, and the Parent Parenthood, all of that is a part of it, and they funnel right into one another. And then you have the schools, they all have their own little agendas in all these contracts that parents half of the time don't even read the papers they're signing, and they're not engaging with what's happening at school. And we've always talked about it's easier to versus parent, it's easier to just throw a tablet at your child. So in today's world, that is, oh, I don't have to deal with you, or I don't want to deal with you here, until it hits close to home, and until a child is being kidnapped or raped, or they have gone off with their friend, and the police departments most of the time will not jump on it right away, and they label it as missing or a runaway. So they don't even jump on it, and by then your child could be in a whole nother cross 3 borders by now.
Yeah, look, I mean, we can't fight this fight without police, you know, and the defund the police movement, the first people that suffered in the defund the police movement in our country were America's children. Well, Jaco, how do you figure? Because every single special task force, special unit, victims against child crimes unit, vice units, okay? Every single one of those are special units that get special earmarked funding. The first units that lost funding in this country with defund the police were all the special units. Dallas, Texas, okay, lost its vice unit because of defund the police. So no more special unit to defend children in Dallas. The predators are celebrating. They're like, this is amazing, because they know the regular street cop do not have the time, do not have the capacity. So we cannot do this without the police. It's impossible to do this without the police. People say, well, Jaco, we can. But okay, great. We have intel on a trafficking situation in a motel. If I go through that motel door tonight, and we have many times, go through that motel door tonight without police, I'm breaking and entering.
Right.
I could argue in the court of law that I'm saving a child. I'm breaking and entering. So what do you need to go in? A warrant. How do you get a warrant? I need the police department. I need the district attorney. I need a judge to sign the warrant. So it's asinine for Americans to go, we don't need police. We can do this on our own. We can community police. It has to hold up in the court of law. Okay, we rescued the child. How is that pimp, that predator, that John that's paying for sex with the child, how's that guy going to get the sentence that he deserves? According to the law, he has to go to court. It has to hold up in court. So people have to think before they speak in these things because they don't know what they're talking about, you know. Rescue all the children. You have to do it with law enforcement, but law enforcement is so overworked, undertrained, that they literally can't act. And that's why you see they have to treat it as a prostitution case when it's not a prostitution case. They have to treat it as a runaway when it's not a runaway. And now 48 hours go by, and if you don't find a child in 48 hours that you're looking for, that child is in the wind, okay? The statistics are staggering of how little children are found after 48 hours, right? And you touched on CPS and the foster care system. Let me give you some statistics, okay? Over 60% of children in the American foster care system today have been sexually abused. 60%, okay? The average American foster child today moves 10.4 times every 24 months, which means that child has 10 new dads every 24 months, okay?
Wow.
That child gets abused, can't even remember which father did it, who did it. You know how difficult it is to build these cases, to track these children, to get CPS to help? I'm not a CPS fan. I'm not. There is a place in society for an organization like CPS if it was functional.
Yes.
But we're literally having CPS hand children to predators because we've got states like California, states like New York, that no longer ask the sex offender to be on a sex offender list. So you're watching people who are felons, who have abused children, become foster parents. And the state hands a child to an individual that should be on a sex offender list, okay? Look at what Cuomo, and I'm not just picking on these guys, I'm just telling you, de
It's
Blasio.
stuff people can look up.
Come on, Bill de Blasio, New York City. Andrew Cuomo, New York City. Stroke of midnight, 2019, going into 2020. At the stroke of midnight, they let every single sex offender out of jail on the street. Years before their sentence. Why? Why would you do that? Oh, they also changed bail reform law in New York, in the state of New York, to where when you're caught with a child red-handed, you get taken to jail, you get fingerprinted, and you're released without bond that day. You get given a date in the future to come back to meet with a probation officer to potentially get an ankle bracelet. Do you know how many of them return to meet with the zero?
None.
So this is the stuff where I say to New Yorkers, okay, if you're conservative like me, if you're a Christian like me or not, if you're a liberal and you have a child, do you really want to be in a situation where your child, you know, gets in contact with a predator and that predator walks the same day? Are you okay with that? You got to ask yourself, when it hits home, you're going to be okay with that? When the law says that guy should get 30 years in prison, but he's going to walk to see a probation officer? And if the case is pled down to some misdemeanor charge, he's going to get 13 months in prison. He's going to walk 7 months later with 1,000 hours community service. This is where I want to ask people in the United States to please be intellectually honest.
Yes.
Stop being emotional. Stop thinking about your political party and who's in the White House, and say, does it logically make sense that a 4-year-old should decide for themselves over their future for the rest of their life of able to be sterile or fertile? Does that make sense? No, it doesn't make sense. And if you say it makes sense, you have a mental disorder.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And that's part of where we also need to be helping these kids as well. Because I have, again, I have a nephew who's in high school, my boy's middle school, and Bridget's daughter's in middle school. And we see the emotional, I don't want to say instability of teenagers, but that's where we are. That's who they are. And we don't tell them that it's okay. It is okay that at 13 years old, you don't know what you want to do for your life. It's okay that you don't feel right in your own body, because that's what happens when you're 13. It's okay that, you know what, maybe your friend is being weird today or whatever, because that's what happens. That's why middle school sucks. That's why high school can suck, because everybody is in a weird space. But now we're trying to tell these kids that instead of no, that's totally normal and be okay with that, we're like, sure, why don't you just go try and be this? Why don't you try and be, you're a boy for the first 13 years of your life? Sure, you're sad today. Why don't you go try and be a girl? What the hell? Like,
Yeah, well,
enough of
look,
this.
Look, I mean, I'm telling you, we got to look. When a country loses its spiritual rudder,
Yep.
when a country loses absolute truth, truth is not fluid. Because where does that end? I stand on a stage, one day and I say, okay, so what if I tell you I'm a lion and unless you roar, you can't talk to me? And then the liberal kids at UCLA say to me, well, that's ridiculous. I said, yes, case in point. When you go through puberty, your body changes, and it's for a reason. You're in transition of what's life and where do I go? And you get it. So there's this desperate search for giving people identity, because the ones that want to superimpose an identity on your child have not found their own yet.
Right.
This is human behavior science, okay? All right, they love to teach, right? This is why you see so many dentists with terrible teeth.
Right.
I mean, I'm like, dude, if you're a good dentist, take care of your own smile.
Right.
I mean, come on, what's going on here? This is the father telling his son, don't smoke, son, while he's got a cigarette in his hand. They love to project, right? Because it makes them feel better about themselves, because they're looking for identity themselves. Truth is not fluid. If you choose a homosexual lifestyle, that's your right. Go. But the second you want to impose that on another human being,
Yes.
the second you want to influence another human being and indoctrinate another human being, and Christians are so shunned for, oh, you guys just want to tell everybody about Jesus, but you want to tell every kid that he should be a boy or a girl and should have sex change and transgender and should, be okay with sex with adults. And it's insane. The projection and the spin and the hypocrisy is nuts. All right. So where does it end? It doesn't end unless you say there's absolute truth. And if you allow, and you've got to be able to come back to center and say, what's the truth? So there's only two genders. And however you choose to live your life, that's your choice. But you can't make the world change,
Right.
change language. Because what if I tell you blue is not blue? Well, blue is yellow. So what if I say tomorrow, you know what? Every red light means go. You stop at a red light, I'm now saying that red means go.
Right.
People are going to die.
Yes.
So people are going to die when you tell Susie at 3 that she can pick any gender, and at 10 give consent to a man to have sex. People are going to die, and they do die. The average life expectancy of a child traffic victim is 7 years. Teen suicide is the highest that it's ever been in mankind's history today in the United States. Do you know that most of the teenagers, those who do leave a note, and not all of them do, but those who do, over 80% of the teenagers that leave a note when they commit suicide, the note is that they were sexually abused, that they can't talk to anybody, that culture is telling them this is normal, that they should have sex, that they're confused, that they don't understand. And so we're not having, let me do a quick little test. Okay, let's do a quick little study here for your audience. We got 2 women here on the line with me. Okay, quick study, and just let's be real.
Okay.
There's a reason the average child that's being trafficked is 12, because of puberty, because you're confused. So the predator can come in and can superimpose a notion in who you are, and can speak flower language, and can drive a wedge between you and your daughter, the father and the daughter, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and win her heart. Okay. All right, here's a quick study. Either of you, when you were 12, whenever you went through puberty, 12 through 15, somewhere in there, it's different, but in that bracket,
Uh-huh.
did either of your fathers, and I'm not trying to speak negative about your father, I'm going to make a point, but did either of your dads, as girls, sit you down during puberty and talk to you about sex, the purpose of sex, about menstruation, about your menstrual cycle, about why your body is changing? Either of your dads?
No.
No.
Okay. Did either of your moms have a detailed conversation about that with you?
No. I had maybe a one sentence, keep it in your pants kind of a conversation. That was the end of that.
Same.
And maybe a book, and maybe
yeah,
a book to read.
maybe.
Okay. All right. So here is the root problem. We're asking fathers today to have conversations with their daughters, but they never had the conversation with them. They've got no training. They don't even know where to start.
Mm.
And you would go, well, Jaco, a dad shouldn't talk to his daughter. A mom should. No. You're missing the point. When a father talks to a daughter between 12 and 15 about what's happening to her body in an age-appropriate way, in a non-exploitive way, okay? The bond between that girl and her dad is going to be forever. He's going to earn her heart, because the predator is going to have that conversation with her from a different angle on social media, and he's going to earn her heart.
Mm-hmm.
Or the boyfriend is going to have that conversation, and he's going to earn her heart. And now the dads have issues with the boyfriends because the boyfriend has her heart and not the dad. And we go, well, what's her problem? She's a problem child. No, we missed an opportunity as a parent to earn the trust and the heart of the child in their most vulnerable moment, right? Same with the sons. So fathers with daughters, mothers with sons, the other gender, and in fathers with sons and mothers with daughters, to where in our house, we're going to talk about the truth age appropriately. My 6-year-old, which is my oldest child, she doesn't know the word sex trafficking, but she can absolutely tell you what I do. She can tell you that we fight bad men who want to hurt girls. She can tell you about her body is private. She's got private space. Not even her sister has access to her private space. She can tell you and now when she gets older, we'll start putting names to it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So I'm going to talk to her about her body's going to change one day before it changes.
Yep.
So she doesn't walk in one morning and go, what the heck?
Oh my God, I'm bleeding. What am I
ready
doing?
to go to soccer practice, and dad goes, what's wrong with Jessie? She's locked in the bathroom for 3.5 hours because her world is imploding.
Right.
And mom goes, you know what? My mom just said, keep it in your pants. Here's your book. And the
Right.
predator goes, there's my soft target.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
I'll have the conversation with her. I'll tell her the purpose of her body. I'll tell her that she's beautiful and she's amazing and she's a woman now. And I see you. Your dad doesn't see you. I see you. I understand, because he's done it 1,000 times. He's so much more experienced than the guy who has his first daughter at 13.
Mm-hmm.
The predator will run circles around you, right? This is the real issue. So you really want to stop sex trafficking? You empower the child like you did with massive information, right? Age appropriately, and they will become very risky to the predator, and the predator will pass by your child because your child will look like they're going to blow the predator's cover.
Yep.
It's that simple.
And people just think, like, we talk to your kids about sex, and people really get this fear like, oh my God, I have to sit down and we actually have to talk about what happens during sex, and we have to talk about what feels good. And no. That is not where we are going with this. The idea is, like you said, talking to your kids about there are private areas, that you have your private space, that nobody gets to touch you, that there are bad things that happen and you need to be aware of these things as you move up in the world. Even when you start saying, hey, at some point this is going to happen. And I've had conversations again with my boys. And as I mentioned on the podcast before, my degree is in biology. So it's very black and white for me. It's very easy for me to talk about it because it is just what happens. And But it doesn't mean that I don't also have a book that I'm referencing to make sure that I say it correctly, or that
Sure.
we open up like, hey, here's what a woman's body looks like, and here's how different it can look, so that again, you're not just seeing what's on TV. Here's what a boy's body looks like, and you're small and skinny right now, but there are boys that look like this, and that you're not abnormal either. And so just having those kind of conversations that, no, we don't have to talk about, hey, when you get the girl in bed. No, that's not what we're talking about.
Don't need to.
Right.
Don't need to. It's
Right.
about, look, your body is private.
Yeah.
When you see someone else show their private parts publicly, you need to know someone is making them do that. Someone is forcing them. Someone is coercing. What's coercion? That, do you like it when your brother or your sister makes you do something that you don't want to do? No, Dad. Okay, that's what happens to some kids. Some people come and they make them, let them into their private space. Well, Dad, that's not right. No, it's not right. And you can train your child to be so vigilant without even being exploitive, without
Right.
even getting to eroticism and any of that stuff, right? And you're not scaring your child. You're being logical with your child. Can you imagine what would happen if we sit with all boys at age 10 and up, and we say, this is how special a woman's body is. This is how special a woman is. This is why God created women. Do you know that there's things a woman can do that no man can do? No matter who you are, how strong you are, NFL lineman, those will become defenders of women. Those are the people that will champion women's rights, because they will have an appreciation for the women. That's not going to be the guy at 21 that goes, oh, it's easy to be a woman. I'll just slap on a pair of fake boobs and a hair and whatever. Now I'm a
Right.
woman. Look at me. I won an Olympic medal as a man, and now I'm a woman. It's so easy. I go, all right, push a baby out of your uterus, and then we talk.
Right.
And that may be controversial. People go, oh, Jaco, you're so controversial. No, it's
Good.
the truth.
Mhm.
Biologically, show me. Raise your hand if you're a man that's carried a child for 9 months. And then the women that can't bear children, they go, well, Jaco, I can't. I go, you still have all the parts.
Yep.
That a man does not have.
Yep.
You still have a woman's intuition. Your brain still works differently. Biologically, on a chemical reaction, you
Yep.
are so different. It is an absolute disgrace for
Mhm.
anybody to say a man can be a woman.
Yep. And that we don't work together like the puzzle pieces that we are. And I don't mean that sexually either. I mean that women are meant to do a thing in the family, and men are meant to do a thing in the family. And the two of those things that come together make the whole.
100%. This is why when I travel, any father that's listening, you travel, you come home, your wife tells you, don't mess up the schedule, buddy.
Yeah.
You come in here, we're on a schedule here. We're in sleep cycles. We're in homework cycles.
Yep.
There's nobody, no man, and this is not to be derogatory to the single fathers out there. You can't be a mom. I was raised by a single mom. The woman walks on water. She is a gift from God. She's not a dad. She's not a dad. And she'll tell you firsthand that I'm not a father. You can't be. And so there's certain, and men were created. We got to go back in time, because everything became so fast. You drive through McDonald's, you drive through Chick-fil-A.
Mhm.
Do you know that there was a poll done, and they asked children in public school in 2019, where do chickens come from? Chickens. And the kids were like, the store. The disconnect, no, it's an animal. It's an actual animal
That comes from an
that
egg.
walks. That animal has to be killed.
Yeah.
And eggs come from the disconnect, right? So because there's such a disconnect, it's such an instant society.
Mhm.
Let's go back to how it used to be, where you didn't eat if you didn't farm.
Yeah.
Okay. You didn't have clothes if someone didn't make it. Okay. Now, in that culture, the men did what? They hunted. Well, while the guy was hunting, what did mom do? Well, these kids need to eat. These kids need to go to school. These kids need to have a schedule. And so now today, because men are no longer hunting for food, we've taken the purpose away from the man. Okay, well, the man's the breadwinner. I'm not the guy. Women can have a full career, thrive, but the man is still the hunter. Now, what do we hunt today? Maybe you hunt opportunity as God leads you. I'm telling you today, we better have men hunt evil. You got to hunt evil. You got to go out there and defend the family from the threat that's coming, right? Not when it's here. Prevent it from coming, right? And so how do you do that? You fight as a man on the wall for your whole community, for the children that are not your children. You hold your brothers accountable. You say, hold me accountable. You talk over barbecue and football. You talk to your best friend and say, bro, are you watching porn? If you are, let's help you get out. Why? Because you're going to be the guy, my best friend, that's going to be a threat to my child. And we can't have that. Let's start having this conversation inside the community of men in our country.
Sorry, Bridget, can you explain why that statement you just made, that if you're watching porn, you're going to be a threat to my child? Because I love the way that you describe this. And because I know that men listening and even women listening are like, I only just watch it this level, or I only just watch it with my wife, or I only just whatever. Can you explain what you mean by that?
Yeah, let's just do a gut throat punch here. Let's just go
Yes.
straight in. You know, your pastor says throat punches, so this is a throwback to your pastor.
Exactly.
Okay? All right, so let's go here all the way. You want to have the real truth? Here's the truth. Why are you watching porn? You need to start there. What is it that makes you have to see other people engage in sex? And unless you can ask yourself that question, you're a hypocrite. Why do you need to watch porn? Answer that question, because something's broken. Real talk. Something's broken for you to need to watch porn. So let's just start there. I mean, that alone, it hurts you. That whole notion that porn doesn't hurt anybody. It hurts you, the viewer, the most.
Yep.
It's going to rob you of every significant relationship in your life. You're going to lose your family. You're going to lose your job. You're going to lose everything. Well, how can I say that? Because it's mathematical fact. These are the numbers, right? Secondly, every person in porn is being exploited. They're being hurt. Are you aware that over 60% of the women in porn are placed in porn by their pimp because they're not making enough money on the street, on the track? So they're forced to go in porn to make up a quota. Do you know that the porn scene you loved was take 57? Do you know that they had to do all kinds of things to her body to sustain the friction and the violence to it? Do you know that every single porn actress has been in the ER, are getting battered and bruised, are coked out, are under narcotics? Do you know that most of them were trafficked as children? Most of them were abused as children? But it hurts nobody. It hurts everybody. Do you know that's the most addictive drug on earth? You know, it's the only drug that changes the neural pathways in the brain. You know, it's the only drug that shuts certain area of the brain down, that changes cognitive function. You know, it's the only drug that gives you tunnel vision to only live for a sexual high that only lasts 30 seconds, by the way, an orgasm. So which means your frequency of use is through the roof. There's no other drug with as frequent use. Do you know that the new class of ED, erectile dysfunction, in our country is men aged 18 through 25? Why? Because they start watching porn at 8, self-stimulate so often that they can't be aroused anymore. Right? Do you know that if you force your wife to watch porn, you're abusing your wife? If you shame her and saying, well, if you don't do this, if you don't perform that act, that's what I want. She could never recreate that act. She doesn't have a camera crew. She doesn't have a makeup department. She doesn't have, how could she ever recreate that? Can't. So she's going to disappoint you. So you're going to build distrust. You know that if you watch porn, you're on a train track. And I think this is what you want me to talk about. You're on a train track. Sex is a track. There's not multiple tracks. Sex is a track. One track. You're on that track as a human being the second you get born, because you are a sexual being. You're on the track. Now, is it healthy or is it not? So imagine this track has train stops, right? 100 train stops. Train stop number 1, you're not engaging in sex. You're a minor, but you're there. Your body is getting activated. Train stop number 1, puberty. All right, good night. Something's happening, right? I'm noticing boys, girls. All right, but it's still healthy. It's still functional, okay? Somewhere on that train track is pornography, okay? Now you engage in porn. You're down the track. The second you engage in porn, you're speeding up. And you're going to go through the train stop so fast Because again, the entry level porn engagement today is age 8, and it's radical, multiple partners, right? It's not soft, okay? And it's a drug. Now you get the high, you need another high. It's harder porn, harder porn, harder porn. You go down the track one and you go, you know what? I'm not getting enough sex from my wife. I'm not getting enough sex from my girlfriend. I'm going to go pay for it. Every single person, the first time they pay for sex, they make sure it's an older woman because they don't want to get in trouble with law enforcement. Okay. Well then that doesn't sustain the high. And they go younger, more risque, multiple partners. And ultimately, the only satisfaction is younger, purer. And it goes pre-puberty, sex with a child on the same track. And you track those guys back and go, where did it start? Not a single pedophile or predator or John that buys sex have I ever met that did not say it started with porn. Not one.
And going off of that, it just, when you were giving that whole speech inside the church, it just gave me flashbacks from relationships that I've been in, and like a previous relationship I was in. And the reason why I was like, I got to get myself out of this was because I was full of so much light, and they were full of like entertainment industry, being in the entertainment industry, and they were full of so much dark. And then as like it got deeper into the relationship, it turned to the like seeing more of the sex, the drugs, and the money aspect. And so when he was on, I could notice when he was on coke, and I was like, I can't, like, I'm not dealing with you. And so then it was like, okay, I'm going to get sober. So I started helping him get sober, and then he relapsed. And then I was like, I can tell you're on something. He wouldn't do it in front of me, but I was like, I can tell you're on something. Like, I've seen this before. I can tell I'm not repeating this pattern. So, then it turned into, once it came to the sexual aspect, he was watching a lot of porn, and he was into that whole anime. And then it kept trying to push me onto the whole polygamy. And I was like, no, like, no, that's totally against me. Like, no, I can't. And so then it got into, well, when you give me head, can you spit and do this? And then he actually sent me a video one day, and I was like, no, like, and so I've like had to break it. I broke it off and got myself out of it, but it turned to that. I was like, I feel like I'm sleeping with the devil, literally, because once you have that intercourse, like it changes the energy, like you're taking a part of that person's soul. And so for me, I was like, I got to get myself out of this. So I love how when you have that conversation and you go that route, because most people don't realize that. And as you get into relationships, it affects you. And so when you are full of so much light, and then you're dating other people, and you're always like, well, why do they make it seem like me? I'm the problem. And it's not. You just can't satisfy them because they started watching porn, or they were abused at such a young age, or they got into the entertainment industry at such a young age, and they were involved in other things that you don't even know that they were tied to. And there's so many different people who have been trafficked and abused that there's things you can't fathom. And it will blow your mind. And so for me, I'm always like, when talking about it, it's people need to realize it's not like selling drugs, and it is a human being we're talking about. It is a person. We're people. And that is someone's daughter at the end of the day. That's someone's sister. That's someone's wife, husband. Boys can be trafficked too, son. So when you look at that, there's no profile to say this is what a pedophile looks like. And everyone needs to realize this is all of our problem. This is all of our issue. And humanity really needs to step up, because at the end of the day, your child is what they're after.
Yeah, no, there's no question. And it's so well said. Look, sex, and you have a biology major and expert on the phone. Sex is sacred. Okay. Mm-hmm. Every culture and society, not just the Christians, there's not a single culture in society's history that does not consummate the act of marriage in whatever way with a sex act. They all recognize that sex is a bonding agent. Well, if you really go into the biblical fashion, when God says a man will leave his house and cling to his wife and they will become one, is because when you have sex, you're signing a spiritual contract with somebody. This is not judgment. I just want you to understand how this works. Every time you have sex with a human being, you're bonding. It's a soul tie. Now, when it's a husband and a wife, it brings them closer together. God created that. And scripture tells you so that you don't lust, so that you don't go. This is why he said, hey, don't reserve yourself from the other without cause, except for when fasting. So not to entice your partner to lust after someone else. But when you engage in sexual relationships with a non-husband or a non-wife, and you break that relationship off, you can't get that piece back. It's not like, give me back my dog. What's the Keith Urban song? My sweater and my records and my sweater. Give me back my records, my cat and my sweater. You can take your records, your cat and your sweater. You can't take back the emotional tie, the soul tie that you gave to that person. You can't get it back. Now we have teenagers with multiple partners by the time they're 20. They're so compromised. They're so broken. The trust is gone. The purpose of love. What is love? What's intimacy? It's so shattered, right? Because we didn't train them that, look, this is seriously powerful stuff we're talking about here. Nothing more powerful. And so you can corrupt or build through sex. And that's why it's so dangerous. When you get into, and it will always go to polygamy. It will always go to multiple partners. And then the question is, are you going to give in to self-satisfaction? Is that really what your whole life is going to be about? Your whole life is going to be about an orgasm.
Right.
Then you have to ask yourself, is that really that important? Now, for the sex addict, they're going to go, yeah, it's my whole life.
Right.
For those who are not addicts yet, they're going to go, when I put it in perspective of life, no, it's not that important.
Right.
It's not. It has its place in its time, but I'm not going to run my life around it.
Right.
There's a lot of other stuff to do. I've got hopes and dreams and goals, right? Okay, put it in its rightful place. Tell your child it has a place, but it is so special. It's so dangerous. It's so powerful. You can't toy with this stuff, right? So no, well said. And so it's just time for us to have this conversation in the church. I'd love for people to support you. I'd love for people to check us out. ShareTogetherNow.org is our organization, or Jaco Booyens Ministries. Connect with us. We form chapters in every city around the country to equip local communities, local parents, how to have the conversation, how to take your school board back, how to have this conversation, at a legislative level, at a school board level, and in your home. And this is the way, through these kind of interviews, that we're really going to win this fight, getting ahead of it.
Yep.
Preventatively, restoring culture, restoring balance in the person, right? Because by the time they're compromised, you're doing triage and surgery. You're trying to do organ transplants at this point. I mean, you're trying to fix things that you don't even know where to start, because the level of compromise for someone who's been sexually abused in trafficking is so nuanced, is so layered. There is no one way to do it. It is an absolute miracle when we get one of those lives restored.
Absolutely. And I think we mentioned it a couple times here that if we can inform our kids, they can look out for the kids whose parents don't know that this is going on, who are uncomfortable talking, who do whatever, that we start creating them to be advocates for the people that they see every day. And that's why it's important.
Absolutely. And look, I'm a man, so I can be hard on the men, for the minute watch. This is the accountability hour. That's it. Stand in the mirror and you got to ask yourself, am I part of the problem? How dare you, Jaco? I'll fight for your child when you won't. How about that? Okay, that should fire you up. Does another man have to come fight for your child because you're not going to step up? Let that fire you up. And you stand and look in the mirror and go, am I part of the problem? Do I abandon my children? Do I pacify them with technology? Am I there but not present? Am I abdicating my responsibility of maturing them, and helping them mature sexually accurately? Am I in porn? right?
Yep.
I can't be standing and go, no child should be sex trafficked, but you're consuming porn.
Right. Right.
You don't get to justify that. I'm sorry, buddy. You don't get to say it doesn't hurt anybody. It hurts your own child. Because let me let the penny drop home for you real quick. Do you want other men in your community to be addicted to porn and look at your child that way? Do you want other men, when your child gets out of the car in the driveway, to undress her when she's 12? Is it okay for them to be hooked on porn?
Yep.
So why is it okay for you to be hooked on porn?
Right.
Maybe we need to protect other children from you, the dad who says no, porn's okay. Right? So let's have real talk here. Okay. Self-accountability. Step in, get help. I'm not judging you if you're watching porn. I'm not your judge. God's the judge. But I'm saying stop, get help. Come to the light side. Come to the side of protecting morality, protecting sexuality, protecting children, right? You can't find yourself on the other side of the ledger. You just can't. You can't afford to, right?
Well, and now they're talking all about the mama bears and how the super moms are coming and all this stuff. And heck yeah, that we are the strong moms out there and we're doing it, but we need that protection. We're there and we will fight to the death for our children, but we need that layer of protection that's going to fight for us. So I loved how you made that comment earlier, like get up on the wall and start looking and protecting the women and children, because we're there fighting with you, but we can't be the only ones fighting.
No, I mean, come on. Okay, think about it this way. Okay, and again, I'm a practical guy. Okay, in the middle of a war zone. Okay, and look, I've seen a lot of stuff in my life. Okay, in the middle of the war zone, how do you protect the hospital? How do you protect the nurses that's caring for people? You lay cover fire. You set a perimeter. You go, you mark it. You say, that's mine. I claim it. That's my hospital. You fly your flag. That's what men are supposed to be doing. You need to lay cover fire for your wife when she's literally tending to the immediate need of the child, right? And you need to engage in that need too. But you have to lay cover fire. You can't go, wife, you lay some cover fire. And you be the triage nurse and the doctor and the teacher. And come on, man, this is ridiculous. Okay, we can't. And when you start confusing gender roles, you know what happens? You emasculate men in this country, right? You tell them they're worth nothing. You tell them you don't need them. You tell them a woman doesn't need a man. No, you don't need a man, but life is a lot better when there's two of us.
Right.
You as my wife, Philippa, me as your husband. I got my roles, you got your roles. It's better that way, right? Because when you need to lay cover fire while you're helping the kids, something's going to break down. The enemy's going to get in, or the kids are not going to be tended to.
Yep.
End of story, right? And so this is a fight men has to. You cannot say, well, this is the wife's job. No, you have a role to play in this. Like a significant role. Earn your daughter's heart. Earn her heart. Lay cover fire. Hunt the enemy away from your home. Right?
Yeah.
Fortify the home, the street, the city, the school board, heck, the country. Right? And by all means, if at all possible, get God back into your house.
Yes.
Yes.
Because if it's
Get
not a
biblical
predator,
truth back into your house.
yep. If it's not a predator who finds your kids, it's the devil.
Yeah.
Well, he's using them. They're his agents.
Absolutely.
They're his agents. They're agents of the devil. I mean, they're agents. They come in agreement with evil. They're his agents. And so for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. In this house, the kids are going to know who's in charge, and that's God, not dad. And then dad, and there's discipline, and there's consequence, and there's authority, and this whole notion that kids should run a household, insane. How's it working out for us?
They can't run their own lives. What are we talking about?
How's society looking? How's Portland, Oregon looking right now?
Right.
Right.
How's it looking? I mean, you think it's working? I mean, right? Until it hits home, and then they want to cry wolf.
Mm-hmm.
Help us, help us, help us. I'm like, you get proactive. So ladies, thank you. I got to jump, but thank you so much for having me on. And you're so amazing. You're warriors. I really appreciate you.
Thank you so much for coming on. We really, really appreciate you taking the time. We know you're busy and we know you have lots and lots of people to help and save. So we appreciate you taking the time to come on with us.
please send me this link. I want to promote it as well. We want to get the word out. Appreciate you very much.
We will. Thank you very much.
So much.
God bless you. Bye-bye.
God bless.